This is episode 1 of the Ownstream podcast with Theresa and Stephen. Welcome to the Ownstream podcast. This is episode 1, and we're delighted to have you with us. I'm Stephen Shelley.
I'm Theresa Sgobba. Really excited to be here.
So, this ought to be on TV. It would be very funny. We have one microphone, and even then, I was starting to move away from it. And so it really incumbent on us to speak directly into the microphone.
Yeah, we're recording this in our bedroom while our baby is napping in the room next door. So this is where we are.
We're very close to each other, snugly here at our desk. Leaning into in front of the microphone anyway. Thanks for being with us. We wanted to take a moment here in episode 1 and talk about what this podcast is, what this business is, what this endeavor is really, and talk about that shortly, and then talk about the series, the types of people we'll be interviewing, and then give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of who we are so that you have some idea of Theresa and Stephen. And I think if you hopefully will engage in this as a series, listen to other episodes, you will learn more about us. Obviously, we can't tell you our full life story. We wouldn't want to do that, but we will give you a snapshot of who we are that is in line with the Ownstream mission. And then there will be more revealed, of course, as we go along. So, yeah, a little sense of the history of this, Theresa and I met back in 2010, almost 7 years ago. We went on our first date, and it clicked right from the start. And at that time, I was a dating coach, and I've been a dating coach since then. I guess technically I still am. I still see clients and do work, and I still coach men on the art of attraction and dating and moving into a relationship. That's a whole nother tale. But nevertheless, but I had always been interested in this movement that has been occurring at least for 10 or 15 years, very dynamically due to the internet and technology and our ability to share with each other things that we're trying out without needing a intermediary like a news channel, for example, ABC or CBS. We can now really communicate directly with each other, talking about things that we're trying. And so it has spawned this magnificent movement away from this mainstream paradigm of living and existing and being and relating to each other. And all sorts of very interesting ideas are being explored by people out there, everything from tiny houses to minimalism to digital nomadism to diet and fitness. It's really spanning virtually every category of the human experience today. And so I had always been interested in that. And so about 7 years ago, I started the Ownstream podcast as a way to uncover those paradigms, feature those individuals, talk to them, and hear from them directly about the things they were doing, hopefully inspiring myself and others in the process. And it was around that time that I realized, I ought to release another version of my How to Get a Girlfriend ebook, which sidetracked me, and I knew that my karma, if you will, or my learning, if you will, wasn't quite concluded with my dating coaching business. And so anyway, I stepped away from anything else and focused on that for the last few years, which I'm glad I did. But so I guess so we have a 9-month-old baby, and the imminence of our child caused me to really reflect on, at least for me personally. Theresa can talk about her own experience in a moment, which I know is pretty vibrant and intense as well. But, the imminence of a child just changes everything. And I began thinking about what I wanted to be doing, how we wanted to raise this child, what kind of atmosphere or conditions do we want her living in, etc. And I know Theresa has a lot to talk about in terms of her work related to that. But I really wanted to create something that could really impact people in a way that seemed relevant to me. Like, when you're married, me as a married man just was not interested in coming up with dating strategies. It wasn't relevant for me. I had no passion for it. So it was really important for me to move on from that. And Ownstream rose once again as what I deeply desired to be doing, the kind of people I wanted to be talking with, the ideas I wanted to be thinking about and exploring dynamically in my own life. And I know Theresa and I have always been on the same page with that. Like, we're always looking up videos online related to tiny houses, related to minimalism, related to law of attraction, related to all kinds of new and exciting ideas and things that are emerging. And we really love being at that cutting edge. And so Ownstream is kind of it's really a partnership between the two of us as a way to explore these ideas ourselves, talk to these people, and to also hopefully inspire you and give you tools and techniques for following your own excitement in your own life, and veering away from the mainstream ways of living and being, questioning that, and creating something that's truly your own, something that's truly exciting and interesting and freeing for you. That's really the aim. So yeah, in other words, we had a little false start back in 2010, but it's returned now full steam ahead, and we could not be more excited.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in addition to when we have a baby, wanting to think about what brings us passion and what brings us joy and what brings us excitement and pursuing that. I think for me also, and I think for Stephen too, it's been about what kind of life do we want to create for Sophia? What are we imprinting? You can just look at her and know that she's learning all the time, watching us all the time. So that's caused me to really look and reflect at the ways in which I still feel, believe, and act in a way that's limited in my life. I don't want to pass that on to her, and I think we inevitably pass things on to our children based on our own belief systems, but it's caused me to really want to challenge the areas in which I still hold back. And that's really a lot about what Ownstream's about too. What are we talking about with the mainstream path? We're talking about kind of doing what we're told to do in society. You go to school for this many years, you get into this college or that college, you choose a career path when you're 18, 19 years old, and you fix to that career path, and you graduate often with debt, and sometimes significant debt. You find a job, and then you often are saddled down in that job. You settle in one place, you're in that job, and you work to pay off your debt. And then you buy or rent a home. If you're renting, you're leeching money often, going into a black hole. If you buy, then you are saddled with a mortgage. You maybe marry and settle down very early. And often, at least in this country, you then start to gain weight, become less active, eat a standard diet that is very unhealthy, very processed, barely resembles food at all. And then you end up turning yourself into a healthcare system that doesn't serve your health. It treats your symptoms and often doesn't cure the diseases you've come to based on the sedentary lifestyle that you've settled into. So by the time you retire and everything you've been holding back and pushing off, your dreams, you can't even live them because your body can't enjoy it.
Not exciting.
Not exciting. And I'll talk about this a little bit when we get into in the various areas of our life, but I definitely have been somebody who for much of my life followed the mainstream path. And that's somewhat of what I'm talking about when I talk about wanting to challenge my own beliefs. Now that we have Sophia and we're, really, I know we're passing things on to her about how we see the world. So Ownstream, just to echo what Stephen was saying and read you a little bit of what's on our website, what is that about, right? So more and more people are moving away from these types of conventional structures of living, making money, and traditional religion. We'll get into that too. Creating their own paths, which arc toward more freedom and empowerment. Largely due to the internet, individuals are now able to connect and communicate with each other in new and expansive ways, revealing to one another empowered models of living and being that are often radically different from the norm. The Ownstream website and podcast seeks to become a focal point for these people and ideas, and to empower individuals with information and tools to broaden their perspectives, choose their own paths, and live more abundantly, richly, and free, which is exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Let me lean in a little bit here. That mainstream path, we'll get into this in a minute, but I think each of us has our kind of moment where we're like, I can't do this anymore. Anybody who veers away from that kind of stiff, rigid, limited structure has a moment where they just can't take it anymore. And when you were talking, I was remembering that for myself. I'll get into that in a minute, that moment, that inflection point where I couldn't, whatever it took, whatever it meant, this was not going to be my life anymore. Anyway, so what we want to do is we want to get into our background for a minute, but I do want to cover a couple of quick things. Our website is ownstream.co. It's not a .com. So in case you're listening to this, you found us through iTunes, you found us through somebody else, maybe somebody mentioned it, and now you're listening to this first episode. Welcome. And you'll notice our website is .co. I did approach the .com guy, and he really wanted to hold on to it, so no problem. I offered him some money, and he wasn't. We weren't on the same page. No problem. Anyway, so we're .co. We love .co. We're happy with .co. We are excited about .co. .co. That's where it's at. And then also, so I used to run a podcast. I guess I've technically run two podcasts: the How to Get a Girlfriend podcast and the Lifestyle Arts podcast, under the banner of my dating business, Dating Advice for Men. And so you might notice, at least in these earlier episodes, a couple things like me maybe doing more talking than Theresa. I'm sure you're like most people. You probably would rather hear from her more than me. Certainly me. But anyway, I'm sort of more familiar with this format and this structure, et cetera. So I might blather on.
We're also balancing childcare, so there are a couple episodes where I have to pop right out.
Right. So we have recorded a few of these episodes, and there was one where Theresa just had to exit within 5 minutes because Sophia, our beautiful, nearly 9-month-old daughter, was crying in the other room. So first things first, as they say. We're also learning how to co-host an interview. Some of our favorite podcasts are like the Rich Roll podcast. He's terrific, and he and his wife Julie will often co-host episodes. It's been fun to reflect on the ones that we've really enjoyed of the two of them co-hosting. And but in our case, we have one microphone, so we're sort of leaning in, talking in front of the microphone, which for some arbitrary reason is very low. So I'm slouching down. Next time we'll remember to lift this up to be mouth level. Anyway, and then the last most important thing we want to say is that we are walking this path. We have not by any means, we're not finished products. We're not, where we have a vision. We'll talk about that, where we want to go, what we're exploring, particularly this year. But we're not finished products by any means. And our goal here is to truly try to open that up and talk very candidly about where we are, hopefully connecting you to us, because we'd like to definitely form community around this project. We want you to be excited about that and to engage with us and to participate. The intent of the podcast series is really to identify individuals who are out on the leading edge. I'll call it the leading edge, but who are out there really exploring these dynamic new paradigms of living and being, and to talk to them and amplify what they're doing, amplify their ideas, spread the word, make this movement even bigger and stronger, and hopefully inspire you to do similar things, or at least be inspired to step off the kind of, what do you call those, like those escalator of the treadmill of everyday life, or at least the mainstream path, and create something that's more exciting and vibrant to you. So we want to we identify these individuals. We want to amplify them and uncover tools and techniques that you can use, that we can use. We're just as much experimenters as you might be, or hopefully will be, or hopefully are. And so that's the point, is to identify these people and uncover how they think, how they act, what they do, how they are, and hopefully pass those tools and techniques along. I also want to say, too, that the mainstream path, I don't think we want to necessarily vilify all aspects of that, because that's not our aim. So if you, say, have a regular job, or maybe you are owning your own home, as we do, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's really about being conscious about it and just being aware that this is a thing and that there are options available, but many might choose to engage in various aspects of that mainstream path, and that's totally cool.
The idea is more, do it because you're excited. Do it because you're joyful.
Right.
Follow your bliss, as one Joseph Campbell might say. And if that brings you bliss, that's awesome, but we want to challenge the notion that you have to, or that's the right way to go, or that's the only way to go.
There are options. So let's get into our stories, our background. This will be the kind of bulk of the podcast. And so what we have done in our interviews so far, and what we really endeavor to explore with our podcast guests, are 3 categories: spirit, lifestyle, and business. Lifestyle is fairly wide open, but it seems to be the best header for things like food and fitness and
shelter,
and all of those things, travel, etc. But let's start with spirit, since for us, at least, it seems like that's a real foundational piece. It's kind of that which is a launch pad or springboard, if you will, into these other areas. And we were just talking about this last night. In spirit, we want to make that as broad and loose a term as possible. If you call yourself an atheist, like one of our guests did the other day, that's fine. We're not interested in necessarily promoting God, though we believe in God. We're not necessarily interested in advocating even for spirituality. I think our aim is to uncover what are the beliefs, what are the thoughts, what are the viewpoints or attitudes that give rise to dynamic action away from the mainstream path. Because there's something going on in anybody who's doing that is probably different than the way maybe many of us see the world. And that's kind of what we want to uncover. So it's not specifically about God, though I think most of our guests so far have indicated some connection to that, some belief in that, but it's not mandatory. And we don't necessarily intend to preach at all regarding that. But anyway, let's get into spirit. We'll talk about our own views and hopefully, and then we'll take it from there. You want to start, Theresa?
Yeah, I'll start. So, yeah, it's really about what motivates and drives our guests, I think. And that's so for me, I mentioned that I've had a fairly mainstream path, I think, at least up until somewhat recently. I was a very by-the-book student. Stephen teases me about it now. I turn everything into grades, he's always telling me I got an A and things, or usually a B, because he likes to tease.
Usually a B plus.
But I really did drive for that. I was taught, that education is valuable, which I believe today. And what I turned that into was, really trying to be perfect. That's the way I was for many years, and score perfect. And so I, worked very hard in middle school and high school to get myself into a certain college, and then again to get into a certain law school. I didn't do well enough, I thought, on the LSAT the first time. So I took an LSAT every weekend for months and months until I basically was able to almost get a perfect score, so that I just knew the test backward and forward. That's the way that I lived, and I went to law school and it started to unravel. I just was, at one point in my life, conventional school really did bring me joy. I really enjoyed learning. I really enjoyed that process of learning, I should say. I still enjoy learning. But when I got to law school, I stopped enjoying it. I was really unhappy. And there's so many great things about law school. My law school is wonderful. The people I met are fantastic. But I was unhappy there. It started to reveal itself as not the right place for me. And I returned to New York, where I had lived before law school. And, through a series of events, I just was unhappy. I had a great job too, but I just knew I wasn't in the right path, I guess. But I didn't know what to do about it. And I was led to this, what I would call a spiritual advisor, who handed me a book one day. And it was Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, which was instrumental in what I would call my waking up. I definitely, given the way that I drove and myself in school, I really lived in my mind. I had what someone once called it to me, a measuring stick in my mind about everything that I did, and this is something I'm still challenged with today, and I'm sure you'll hear more from me about. But when I read this book, I was I remember being on the New York City subway, and there's this beautiful part where the train comes above ground, and I was reading this part of the book where he says, just close your eyes and feel the energy in your hands. And I remember I just did that, and I felt this pulsation, I felt this vibration. And along with that came this overwhelming sense of freedom, this blank slate, this untapped potential, this knowingness that I had had all along in my life. And I felt this sense that immediately I can be whoever I want to be. I can be who I wanted to be when I was a child, before I learned any of this, before I decided Theresa is this person or that person. Theresa is a student. Theresa is a lawyer. Theresa looks like this. She has relationship problems because of this. All these ways I had defined myself. I knew there was something original about me that was free and clear of all of those imprints, I guess, and that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And so from that point on, I really sought to pursue that sense of freedom and joy and completeness. And I knew that I could be anything I wanted to be, and that there was something else out there for me than this path I had taken. There was an unexplored path that I could take. And so I've basically been, that was in 2008, about 9 years ago. January 2008 is really when that started, right after I had graduated from law school. And, I just pursued that. So I, even before that, even when I was unhappy, I did a lot of yoga. And I remember being in yoga, and, I would love Shavasana because it would take me a 90-minute yoga class to clear my mind. It still does sometimes today. And I bet a lot of people can identify with that. I mean, so many people do yoga, and of course I did it for the fitness and all of the Western reasons too, but there was this seeking that was going on, and that continued when it started to be more conscious after I read A New Earth. But it would take me a 90-minute yoga class to be in my body, be so focused on the moment, and then lie in Shavasana. I remember the vibration there too in Shavasana, where I just felt clear. I just felt clear. I wasn't in my head. I was in the moment. And again, that same feeling of freedom, potential, openness. So I pursued the yoga path. I took a teacher training at my wonderful yoga studio in Brooklyn. I want to give a shout out to the Jaya Yoga Center, right around the corner from where we used to live in Brooklyn. Loved it, and really had, was deepening my awakening, and have continued to this day. And, today, I'm sure Stephen will talk about this, but, we continue to seek. And right now we're listening to and reading a lot of Bentinho Massaro's work. He really has distilled so clearly these principles for boldly connecting with source, and not denying yourself that opportunity. It's been challenging, it's been challenging having a new baby, and my job, and I'll talk more about this later. I work New York hours here in California, so I start at 7 a.m. And so, getting up in the morning and wanting to have a little time with Sophia before I start work at 7, or, really trying to find time in the morning, because I do believe that I want to start my day. Every day I have to remind myself that I'm on a spiritual path, that I'm not my mind, that I'm not defined by who I am. Otherwise, I wake up in fear and anxiety and worry about what I need to control that day. I still live with that student mindset. What approval do I need to seek? What do I have to manage to make sure everything's okay? And I don't have to do that. If I believe, as I do, that I am part of God, I am part of the one creator, I am part of source, that we all are, that I have infinite power and abundance, I don't need to control and manage all of those things. I want to seek that feeling first thing in the morning. And so that is something that, that I say is very important to me, and yet I find many reasons not to do it. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. So that is the primary pursuit in my life today, which informs all the rest.
Yeah, we'll, gosh, that just uncovered a lot for me too. We want to also, one question we're going to ask each of our guests is just as clearly as possible, or at least most of them, what is your conception of God? There's this understandable yet, I think, less and less relevant preciousness around talking about that. If there's anything we should be talking about, it's like, what is our notion of that? What do we think this creation is really all about? And if God doesn't work for you, fill in the blank. It's not about the traditional kind of maybe punishing religious God, but we'll get into that in just a second. A real inflection point for me was when I moved to New York. I moved to New York in 1994, and within a few weeks, I got this great job working with Merce Cunningham, the great dance choreographer, and traveled the world with him for a number of years. Got very close to him. It was an amazing experience. And through that, I got exposed to Zen philosophy, particularly as his late partner, the great composer John Cage, was so interested in that. And so Merce talked to me about that. I read about it. It didn't make any sense to me, but it did show me that I was interested in spirituality. I was interested in, or at least I was open to the fact that there's more here than meets the eye, or if you will, the visible spectrum. And so that was kind of a jumping off place. But one moment that came to mind, I was walking around the East Village. I used to live on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and I was walking down Clinton Street one night. I don't remember where I was going, maybe just to a store or a deli. And it was particularly vivid to me, and it was as if suddenly I came alive for a second in a way that I had never done before. And it showed me that, wow, there's a presence in me that is asleep often, but that can come to the fore and vivify everything. And I could see things more clearly. I could smell things better, which may not be the best thing on Clinton Street, at least back then. I could hear things. It was as if my thoughts ceased for just a moment and everything was elevated. And it was starkly different. And then the old kind of habitual way of looking at things kicked back in. But I was really struck by that. And obviously, I still remember it to this day. I can still see the street light like beaming into my eyes. It was very powerful. Shortly thereafter, I got very interested. I was into theater at the time, and I was studying Peter Brook, the great director, and he was a student of Gurdjieff's, who was a kind of Armenian Greek mystic who surfaced in the West in the early part of the 20th century and passed on a very vibrant and very compelling teaching. I was involved in that for a number of years. I found it limiting in a few ways. Didn't quite scratch my itch, but it did provide me this wonderful kind of introduction or foundation of a spiritual life. But I did leave that. My teacher died, a wonderful man. He passed away about 5-6 years ago. So when he passed, I departed because he was a real connection to what they called the work for me, and I got a lot out of that. And since then, I had been kind of wandering a bit. I've been reading Eckhart Tolle. I love The New Earth. I thought that's a very special book. It's a very good introduction to a kind of spiritual teaching that's vibrant now about energy and about vibration. I finally got over my resistance to this whole channeling thing and got into Abraham Hicks's work. Esther and Jerry Hicks, the late Jerry Hicks, and now Esther Hicks, travels channeling an entity called Abraham, teaching the law of attraction. And The Secret promoted that poorly, though it did expose it broadly, but it didn't. I think it created a lot of frustration more than anything else, but it did at least activate that idea in maybe our collective consciousness in a beautiful way. And I think a lot of people who were excited by that movie, who became maybe discouraged, have now found their way to the Abraham teaching and have found once again that excitement and a real vibrant source of that teaching in Abraham, which is really, really powerful and really, really a real call forward. And I'll let you explore that. We watch YouTube videos. There's millions of them probably, and if that's interesting to you, check those out. And then last but not least, as Theresa mentioned, Bentinho Massaro is kind of this wonderful, he's a kid, he's like 28, but he's a real example of, I think, the teaching that seems most relevant now. And I'll just say this, like I have studied a lot of teachers who have passed on, and I now more than ever appreciate the teaching brought by a living individual. And Bentinho's message is fairly simple. We create our own reality. We are gods, if you will. Maybe not the one ultimate creator, but we are aspects of that. And we are creating our world and our life around us, through us, and have that kind of power. Reconnecting to that, remembering that, is what this is really about. And Anyway, so that would be my little spiritual path. I think the real inflection point was that moment I talked about in the East Village that kind of caused me to begin to question not only the nature of things, the nature of myself, but by virtue of that, the nature of everything, which leads me back to Ownstream and what this project really is, which is a process of questioning, of looking at my life and questioning things and wondering if there's more. I think we should now move into lifestyle and business. Theresa, you want to talk a little bit about some lifestyle stuff?
Sure. So what, so given that, given our spiritual beliefs and the paths that we're set on, and given the idea that we're here to, what we believe, we're here to reconnect to that part of source that we are, and that freedom really that comes with that notion, that power, that freedom to create our reality. We want to create a reality that's beautiful and exciting, and we want to follow our excitement. And you'll hear us talking about that a lot. Stephen talked about it at the beginning. We're really seeking to follow our excitement, and Bentinho talks about that. That's what we're here for. When we do tease it down and streamline to who we really are. We are joy, we are freedom, we are light, we are love. And I think we all resonate with that. Even if you don't identify as God, and I didn't for many years, or spirit even, there's, I think, in many of us and all of us, I believe in all of us, there's a sense of joy and love and light that we're seeking, And
excitement could be stated or defined as the ultimate creator kind of pulling us in a certain direction, wanting us and therefore it to experience something and to expand in a certain way. I think that's how Bentinho would talk about excitement. So I get caught up on that word. Sometimes I think, well, geez, what am I going to do? Play video games all day? Not that I am excited by video games, but there is a certain geez, that seems irresponsible. I'm excited by pizza. Am I going to eat pizza all the time? No, I'm also excited by feeling great and being healthy. But excitement could be interpreted, although pizza's okay. But excitement could be reframed as God, if you will, pulling us in a certain direction, wanting to expand, through us to expand its understanding of itself. That's how I think of it, and I find that particularly helpful. I'm sorry to...
Right. No, that's right. I think we do want to distinguish it from, momentary hits of pleasure. We all seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's part of the human condition. But I think that's not what we're talking about here in terms of momentary pleasure. I have had those moments where I overeat or go on a shopping binge or something because I don't like how I'm feeling in the moment. That's not what we're talking about. Not that. That's a false sense of needing to fill myself because I don't have that deeper connection to God and bliss. And usually it's a replacement. And usually I'm doing that because I'm not following my true excitement, my true bliss, and there's a different sense. So what do I do in my lifestyle to follow my excitement? What am I working on today? As Stephen mentioned, we do own our home here in California. And I've always, when I was in New York, I rented for many years, and the rents there are exorbitant. They're just your whole paycheck is going to your rent. So I've had that experience for many years, and we're very fortunate to own our home here. When we moved to California last year, which was following our excitement.
Away from Brooklyn, away from New York.
Yes, and we were really excited to live in Brooklyn for a long time. Right. We both were led there based on our excitement for a long time, but it stopped being exciting. And we were having a baby, and I grew up in San Diego, and I actually never thought that I would move back here. I wasn't excited about living here for many years. And then when Stephen and I started dating, we would come out for trips here, and we just loved it. Every time was like, this relief, this joy, this serenity. And I think that we got married out here and just were attracted here. And so we live in Encinitas, California now. We love it. It's wonderful. We live right by the ocean. We go on ocean walks at sunset. The sun is outside. It feels good. People are happy. People are fit and active. And these are things we're attracted to now, So we moved out here. We explored building a tiny house, which is something we're still interested in, and living tiny, which is, a 200, probably for us 300. Sometimes I push Stephen to say, could we get it to 400 square foot tiny house on wheels or not? That's absolutely customized. Every little bit of it is useful for your lifestyle, and there's no excess there. And we explored that. We talked to Tiny House Nation, the TV show. We got somewhat far along in that process. But what happened was we realized we wanted to live near the ocean, and we looked for land out here that we could put a tiny house on, and we at least couldn't find it at that point. So
the only land available was literally like almost in the shoulder of Highway 5. We weren't going to live on the freeway, so therefore no tiny house out here, at least yet.
We're seeking nature. We're seeking closeness to the ocean. People who live in tiny houses often live on large plots of land where there's space to grow and do all these other things we're interested in. And so for now, we bought a condo, and we live 5 minutes from the ocean, and that's so exciting. And now we're thinking about ways to amplify that, which I'm sure we'll get into more as we go along. We're still interested in minimizing. We have a 950 square foot condo, and we have, I think, a regular amount of stuff. I have many more clothes than Stephen does. But we've been very interested in minimalism, really paring down to what's essential, because often your stuff, what you possesses you, right? Mm. And I have that experience Stephen jokes about this, but I have so many clothes in my closet that I just have not worn for years, and I wear the same things every day. I'm like a yoga pants girl. I have a pair of pink legging pants that were made of water bottles that I got here in Encinitas that I just love. They're recycled pants. I just like to be comfortable and, occasionally dress up for a date night. But but I have a lot of things I don't need. And I think that's very common. We accumulate stuff, and then we don't want to let it go because we can become attached to it. And in that way, it possesses us. I think about what's in my closet that I don't wear and feel some twinge of guilt about that on a regular basis. Why am I putting energy out in that way? So one of the things that we're looking to do this year is to strip down. We took a trip to Asia a couple of years ago, 2014, where we lived out of 24-liter backpacks inspired by our friend Tynan, who's podcast episode 3, right? Yeah. And we lived with just, a handful of items. We bought some products, icebreaker clothing that you can wear over and over again, and it doesn't smell even when you're hiking and active. Awesome. And it's just, it felt great to just have that many things and just, again, pare down to the essentials of who you really are. A couple other things I'll say, and then I'll turn this over to Stephen. I talked about becoming a training to be a yoga teacher. I've only taught a very little bit. I did it mostly to deepen my practice. So I've wondered. I teach Stephen and I yoga here at the house, and I've taught in a few other forums. But
this would be like the fitness version of your lifestyle.
Yeah. I feel really good in my body when I do yoga. I love yoga. I love going to the gym. I really enjoy running, which I hated as a child. But I think I hated it because I wasn't very fit. It was hard for me to run. I run a half marathon. I've been really attracted to doing a long race again, which has been a little challenging after having a baby, just finding time for that, But I consider myself very healthy. I eat a whole foods plant-based diet, which is very important to me. You'll hear me talk about this on the podcast, but plant foods are a big interest of mine. I was vegetarian on and off in my life, but was very attracted to eliminating eggs and dairy for all the reasons that one becomes vegan, but especially because of intuitively how I felt when I ate eggs and dairy. It didn't feel good to me. I always felt heavy. I also felt like I was harming animals in the environment based on the ways that we treat animals, So for me, the whole foods plant-based diet is always what feels the best. And we
call it that to distinguish it from being vegan, technically,
right?
For a reason. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. So I've been an unhealthy vegan, unhealthy vegan, and I've done that. I've been an unhealthy vegetarian too, but an unhealthy vegan. It's very easy to be vegan. My mom said, "How could you be a fat, overweight vegan?" Because I was talking about that earlier part of my life. And you eat bagels all the time. There's infinite products now that are vegan. You can eat vegan box of vegan cupcakes. You can eat everything you can eat except for meat and dairy as a vegan. So
but you can't eat veggie burgers and
processed sausage,
good.
veggie sausage. You could eat anything. French fries. You could make meals on French fries. So that's not what we're talking about. Whole Foods plant-based is focused on real food. Whole foods, fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, and that's how I really feel the best when I'm eating that way. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and then again, is travel. That's an excitement for both Stephen and I. I'm sure he'll jump in on that. Right after I had that experience reading Eckhart Tolle, I was just leaving a job, and I went on a road trip. I drove cross country and back by myself, and it was one of the best experiences I ever had. Kind of going wherever I wanted to go and doing whatever I wanted to do and following my excitement. And Stephen and I also took, as I said, a trip through Asia in 2014, which I'm sure he'll talk more about.
Yeah, I'll pick it up from there and kind of maybe take those topics in reverse, because we, our first Memorial Day, was it? Or second? One of our first Memorial Day together, we found ourselves on the beach in the Rockaways out in Brooklyn, and which is a great little escape from city life. And we started talking about going around the world and a true RTW trip. And I guess this technically qualified as that, though we spent most of our time, we did fly around the world, but our time was spent in Asia, Thailand, Cambodia, India, Nepal. My experiences in travel go all the way back to when I was 1 year old. And so it's in my blood to be on the move and to explore and to uncover parts of the world, and my dad and mom have both taught me that. But anyway, that trip was really powerful. We lived out of 24-liter backpacks, as Theresa said, and it showed us that, man, we don't need much at all. It's okay to want more things than what you need. That's cool, as long as it's conscious, as long as it's not just blind accumulation, which is so prevalent in our world. But I had I had 2 T-shirts, 1 woolen Prince button-down shirt, a pair of jeans, a pair of shorts, bathing suit, a few pairs of underwear, maybe 2 pairs of socks, and sandals, and my laptop, and a bunch of equipment, because I was recording podcasts in India and Cambodia, Thailand, for my dating business. And it all fit into this 24-liter backpack, and it was amazing. It was the most freeing, wonderful experience. So whenever I travel now, even with the baby, I'm in that backpack. I do not carry suitcases. I don't carry a lot of stuff with me. I love being light and nimble. And I think it's been harder for Theresa and the minimizing stuff here around the house because of the pregnancy and just accumulating all these maternity clothes and just your body changing so much. It's a whole different reality for her. So it makes more sense for her to have more things. And it's been hard to kind of offload those things too, which mothers try to do. They try to pass it on to the next mother who's pregnant. We're sort of waiting for that next person to show up. We don't just want to get rid of these things. We'd like to give them to somebody else. So, but travel's always been a big part of my life. My time working with Merce Cunningham, we were on the road 5 or 6 months of the year. I've been all over the world a few times. And I love this movement now towards more minimalistic travel, using points, like our travel around the world, or it was around the world because we flew from California to Asia and then from Asia over the pole back to California. So technically we circled the globe.
Yeah, and I think we talked about an around the world trip, and when we decided we were going to have 3 months, we both said, what's most exciting to us? And we both said India. That was the biggest place. And we wanted to go to Southeast Asia too. We'd been to Bali on our honeymoon.
And so we hit all those spots, but we didn't pay a dime for any of our air flights. We did it all using points. We racked up points. We followed the points guy and a few other strategies where we could collect points. We ended up with about 500,000 points. And it wasn't that hard to do that, by the way. Don't get put off by that number. And we traveled to and from Asia totally for free. You pay a few extra fees here and there, taxes and stuff, but I think our total travel expenses were probably under $500
yeah, definitely.
All in, and that was everything. It was amazing. We actually also used miles for kick-ass hotels, which in India we really needed that for a later time. So anyway, I'm also Whole Foods plant-based, though probably a shade under the mark that Theresa sets, just because I have cravings for meat, and every once in a while I will eat meat. Christmas Day, for example, I had a steak. Every once in a while I'll have a burger, and every once in a while I will indulge in pizza. My habit, though, is if I don't have some sort of framework that I'm buying into for health reasons, like whole food plant-based, I will default, rather. It's not that I find myself because I'm doing it, but I will default into a pattern of eating that's less than optimal, and I will eat junk food, or I will eat unhealthily more often than not. And so giving myself a mark to hit, like whole foods, plant-based, and affirming that and being excited about that, which I really am, it helps me stay the course and every so often be able to bounce off of that if I'm having a strong craving and have a piece of meat, but then come back on. And it really seems to satisfy it. I like the idea of listening to my body and giving it what it wants, and usually it wants a whole foods, plant-based diet. My fitness is all over the place. I'm not nearly as, I guess, what's the word I would use? Like you're like a real yogi. I do yoga periodically. I'll go running periodically. I love to surf very badly, and I find that to be an incredible workout. I've always kind of rented and bought homes. We're interested in the tiny house movement. We're interested in people living in RVs and vans, and I think something we're going to try next fall is something more formal along those lines. But I do think that I could call myself a minimalist with clothes and things. I really try to throw things away if I'm not using them or pass them on to somebody. I have probably 30 to 40 pieces of clothing to my name. I love them all. For Christmas, for example, the main thing I wanted was a really great pair of jeans, and that's the only pair I wear. I wear that pair every day. I don't need another pair of jeans because I have this kick-ass pair of jeans that I love to wear. So one thing about minimalism that I will share is that it's really not about lack at all, but it's really about having a small amount of things, but that all of those things are kick-ass. They're great. I love them all. I'm wearing a shirt right now that I love. I'm wearing like my kind of lounge pants that I absolutely adore. And I don't put anything on my body that I don't absolutely freaking love. And all of my clothing, I love it. And I don't have that much of it because I don't need that much of it. I don't want extra stuff, period. And so I have things that I really adore. And I think that is what's underlying minimalism. There's a great new documentary out about that, produced kind of by the minimalists, though a bunch of people are interviewed in it. In fact, two of our friends are in it, Colin Bevan and David Friedlander. Shout out to them if they're listening. But anyway, that's kind of what my practice is in and around stuff and things.
And
Theresa,
I think, I just wanted to add at the end of that, the through line of all of this, as it is, what Ownstream's about is more freedom. So when Stephen was talking about his clothes, I was thinking about, it feels good to have those clothes, right? It makes you feel more free to have just things that excite you. Like thinking about what Stephen said compared to what I have in my closet. Like I said, it's weighing me down. We want to be active and fit and light on our feet with a whole foods plant-based diet because we feel good in our bodies. We want to explore the world. We want to travel minimally,
minimalism.
Travel as minimalists because we feel connected. We feel excited about that. We feel free, light. And so that's really what all of this stuff is about.
Yeah, exactly. Like right now, I'm looking in my closet and I can see my things there, and I'm like, I love all of that. I love them. They're great. I can't wait to put those things on. When I put them on, I feel amazing. I feel awesome. That's how it should be. That's really how it should be. Okay, let's segue into business. I'll start this one. I'll fast forward through some of the early stuff. My first job, as I mentioned, was working with Merce Cunningham. It was a very intense job. It was an amazing job. As a kid, I was 22, 23, working for this icon in the theater and modern dance world. We traveled the world. I went all over the place. I had some amazing experiences, and I treasure each of those moments and the people that I met at that time. Merce and I became very close, and he's a real mentor of mine still. I can still hear his voice. Very special. From there, I really wanted to kind of have my own arts career, which I guess I should mention. I had about a 20-year arts career, which I guess just ended at least this current phase. But anyway, about a 20-year arts career, and I'll talk about kind of the last project I had, which is now concluded. But a real pivot point for me was when I left Merce. I got a corporate job working in Midtown Manhattan for a headhunter as an executive assistant, and it was a great job on the surface. I made good salary. I'll never forget when I got my first bonus at the end of the first year. I was like, holy cow, I've never seen that amount of money in my life. I was flabbergasted. And so I worked this corporate job thinking I will make extra money to produce my own art. And instead, what happened was I found myself in a corporate environment, and there's nothing wrong with the corporate environment if that's exciting to you. To me, it was not exciting at all, ever. On any day was that exciting. I dragged myself there. It was a very stressful environment. It was boring. It was repetitive, and I had to do repetitive tasks very quickly so that somebody else could mop up with money. All good people, by the way. I'm not implicating any of the people. Like, I had great relationships with those people. They're wonderful people. But the atmosphere and the environment and the intent just did not resonate with me at all. None of that stuff mattered to me, it seemed. And yet I was there kind of by default. I needed a job. I needed to make money. And I could not necessarily think outside of the box at that time, or would not. And so I did that job for a long time. I would show up there every day and grind it out. I'd work probably 60, 70 hours a week. And this is before BlackBerries and iPhones. And I can only imagine what that job is like now with constant availability and access through email and texting. Anyway, so, at a certain point after 8 years, I decided, I can't do this anymore. I've got to leave. And I leapt, and I took a leap of faith. And one little segue, I guess, thing I should interject here was that in 2004, dating and relationships, we're just going to talk about that on a whole separate podcast, but I was struggling with women and dating, and so I found help online, which sometimes is good, sometimes is not so good. Anyway, I got pulled into the seduction and pickup community. And even as I say that, I got pulled in. It's like, I had nothing to do with it. Like, I allowed myself to get pulled into the seduction and pickup community. I became a pickup artist. I was in Neil Strauss's book, The Game. My pen name under that world is Stephen Nash or Playboy LA. I'll just leave that right there. But I had I moved to Project Hollywood. I lived with Mystery. I lived with Neil Strauss. I lived with a bunch of these guys. It was a pretty intense, fun yet somewhat toxic period of my life. Anyway, when I left, so I did that for 6 months in the midst of this longer corporate career, if you will. And I came back from that time because I knew I had to get the hell out of there. It was toxic. It was insane. I lived with Tynan, who's our third guest, who has his own take on things. But anyway, I came back to New York, resumed my corporate career, which for about a month felt really normal and good. And then I realized, oh, Jesus, this is what that is, which is, as I said, kind of mundane and repetitive and extremely stressful. And so when I left my corporate job in 2007, I took the leap to be a full-time online entrepreneur. I had my own business at the time, How to Get a Girlfriend. I ran a business called Cutting Edge Image Consulting, where I counsel men on how to improve with women in dating, get relationships, etc., which I still believe my philosophy, my approach. It helped me get Theresa, which she downplays how wonderful she is, by the way, when she talks about, when we were talking about earlier about her grades and stuff, she is pretty excellent when it comes to being a partner and a mother, a wife, a friend. I'm impressed by her every single day, no doubt about it, and I feel very fortunate to have her in my life. But so at the time, though, I took a leap and became a digital entrepreneur. I had my online business, and I knew I could be successful, and I was successful for a period of time. But eventually, I was in another relationship at the time. I just got tired of teaching men how to meet women. I just wasn't doing it. It did not feel relevant. And so, I stuck at it for a number of years, and I learned a lot. I had some success. It was great, and it taught me all the basics, all the mechanics to running an online business, running a location-independent business, running a business that exists online. You don't have to have a store. You don't have to turn the lights on. It is incredibly empowering, and more people are doing this. More and more people are starting their own online businesses and finding real resources, real abundance, real empowerment. They're making a lot of money online. One of my friends, Eben Pagan, has started, I think, 7 or 8 8-figure online businesses. So it is a big-time industry, and Ownstream is part of that. It's definitely part of that. We want this to be a fully location-independent business that allows us to travel and do what we want and do it from wherever we are. One last thing I'll throw in here is my arts career from the years 2012 to 2016, along with being a dating coach here and there, though, as I said, it wasn't that burning a passion for me. I ran a performing arts festival in Brooklyn, a great experience called the Beat Festival. Had a lot of fun, learned a lot, produced some wonderful art in Brooklyn. And after 5 years, we moved out here. It no longer really felt relevant for me to be running a business in Brooklyn. And we also wanted something that had more scalability. I didn't want to just be working with interesting people in Brooklyn. I wanted to be working with interesting people all around the world. It feels like this is the time. This is the era of, of connecting with people beyond, your neighborhood or your community. And there's so many interesting things happening now across the world, not just in Brooklyn. So the Beat Festival kind of ran its course. We had a 5-year, very successful run. It gave me a lot of confidence on running my own business. It was very successful. We served a lot of people. So anyway, that is now wrapping up. We're closing down the entity with that, and now my attention is fully on Ownstream. So I hope I covered business, and I'll turn it over to Theresa.
So as I mentioned, I had a fairly standard career path for a while in terms of our education and career path, in terms of college and law school. But I did, when I moved to New York after college, I absolutely was pursuing a passion and excitement for me, which has been the focus of my career, which is helping young people who are involved in the justice system. And I studied human biology and youth development in college, which was really about how people develop in our society, how they shape their ideas, how they become who they are. That's something that's still interesting to me. And I found an awesome job when I graduated from college and moved to New York and stayed with that organization and developed a career there for a number of years, even before, during, and after law school. I worked with so many people who inspired me, and it was a really good experience. And what happened was I still work in that field now, but I really wanted more freedom in my life. I didn't want to be working in an office environment, despite, my great colleagues. And I miss that now. I actually miss working with my colleagues. I work remotely from our home in Encinitas, but I knew when I had a baby, for me, I didn't want to be gone for 10 hours a day. And that's really what it looks like, at least in New York, when you're commuting basically an hour in each direction. You work 8 hours. It's sort of a minimum 10-hour day away. And that I knew I wasn't going to want that when I had a baby. And so I left that job, and, we traveled some, we explored life here in Encinitas, and then I started consulting, which was great, consulting in the same field, exploring some new interests there. And that opened up some location independence for me. And my clients and now the employer that I have now have been so fantastic. What happened when I followed my excitement in doing that and wanting a more independent lifestyle, it turned out that my employer and one of my clients, both of my clients actually at the time, my other clients, I was working for 3, they all were okay with that. I said, I'm moving to California, and they all valued my work, and they all, wanted me to be a member of the team regardless. And that was so exciting. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I knew what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to be out here in California with my family, with Stephen, with the baby we was on the way at that time. And it's amazing that I've been able to, I work remotely from our office here in the, our office/bedroom here in California. And I'm still doing that. And it's really, I feel really, really fortunate. And at the same time, I've been able to, have had these other interests along the way that have been pulling at me that I really didn't have time to do when I had a 10-hour a day job and commute, and I would just be so exhausted coming home from that, just in terms of a time perspective, and wanting to cook a healthy dinner, and then there's your day, so, and maybe get some exercise in. And now we have a baby, so it's like there's so much more. And all along the way, I've been interested in a few other things. I've mentioned yoga, plant-based diet, I've here and there tried to create my own business around that. I've learned so much that's been just, blown open my world in terms of health and healing. We didn't mention it in terms of healing when talking about whole foods, plant-based diet, but, I have, my father died of cancer 5 years ago, and we've had a number of friends pass due to cancer and experience other diseases, heart disease, that I know are tied to diet, largely. And so that's been just such a passion for me that's been lingering, right? So here I really excited, Stephen taught me about online business. He had me read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He told me about his dating coach friends who were making millions a month with an online business. I had no idea that existed. I really didn't. So the idea that we can take what has brought us freedom and has helped us pursue our joy and share that with others, that's such an exciting idea to me. And so to be able to do this with Stephen and do this while I also have work that's enabling me to support our family and support Sophia while we create this business is such a great, exciting thing.
Yeah. I'm so glad Theresa was such a good student, because she keeps bringing back the notion of following your excitement. I get kind of rambling, as you've probably already realized. But it really is about that. Like, what feels good? What's exciting? Make that happen. Like, commit to that. And know that you will be supported. Like, there is support for that. Actually, there's a lot of support for that. There is an abundance of support for that. So, the way we wanted to wrap up this first episode is to talk about kind of our aims for the year, our vision for at least the next kind of phase of our life. And this will become clearer as we go along. We'll talk more about this. It'll flesh out, but wanted to hint at a few things that we're endeavoring for this year. This is kind of our aim. Right now, for example, we are, through the holidays and at the end of last year, particularly with the baby, like, it's been very easy to do takeout food and just eat a little less mindfully that we would want to. So we're in the midst of a cleanse. It's about to wrap up, in fact, in a week. A cleanse where there's no alcohol, no sugar, no processed sugar, no gluten, no meat or dairy, and what am I missing? No caffeine.
Yeah, that's no caffeine. We've cheated.
That's why I forgot of that one, because I'm not doing that. So we're having this cleanse. It's been wonderful. Like, I feel lighter. I feel better.
He lost 11 pounds in 1 month.
Yeah. I was up to 189. Now I'm down to 178. I think my optimal weight is about 175. So anyway, we're doing that, but we're doing a weekly hike here in the San Diego area. We are committing to going to the beach and watching the sunset one time per week. I am learning to surf. Theresa is a yogi, so we're committing to doing that once a week for each of us. So I'm going to be out in the water with my new surfboard once a week. Theresa will be in a yoga class once a week. And then in the fall, we're going to take a more, a trip, but that explores dynamically a lot of the ideas that are so vibrant and at this leading edge. So we're playing around with a number of things right now. We may go somewhere and live somewhere else for a while, or we may live out of a mobile living scenario, like an Airstream is really attractive to us, or one of these kind of sprinter type vans that people are living in and traveling in. And if that were the case, we would go throughout the Southwest. I think our loose thinking would be to kind of travel north into Canada, across through Banff, and then down through New Mexico and across back to San Diego. That would be a few months. We would be fully mobile. We'd be living on the road, working on the road, doing everything on the road. So we'll see how that materializes. Right now we're looking into vans and Airstreams, and we're exploring all the options there and seeing what really excites us. So that will come clearer as we go along. We'll be doing sessions, I'm sure the two of us, where we talk more about that, the details, etc. Hopefully getting you inspired by that, maybe follow along our journey, maybe even connect with you on the road. That'd be really cool. So that's coming. That looks to be September, October, November. So we have some time to put that into place, but it's all falling into place already. I think that's the power of intention. And then most importantly, or maybe not most importantly, but more relevant to this podcast, is building this business, building this platform. It's a business, but it's really a platform for these ideas where they can be amplified and shared. And we want you involved in that. We want you to be a part of it. If you have ideas of people we should interview, please, go to ownstream.co, find our contact tab and send it to us. But really this year, at least in terms of business, is creating this platform, a truly location-independent business where we can travel and build something of value, of meaning, of relevance at this time, but that's also exciting to us. And I think we found that. This feels really good. Do you have anything to add, Theresa?
No, I think that's it. I was listening to all of that. We for the past few years we've put together a vision board at the beginning of the year, and what a vision board is, for those who haven't done it, is you take a bunch of magazines and just intuitively sort of go through it and cut out things that are exciting to you, and it's really fun to look back at those because things have materialized. We traveled through Asia. We moved to California. We have this beautiful baby girl. We even have the car that was posted on the vision board. It's really funny.
We ended up with the exact same car.
Which it's just interesting. And so this year we took some of the best images that were still relevant for us and then added a bunch more. So we have a vision board sitting near our desk and our bed, which again are in the same room. And just thinking about it's not enough to just have a vision board, but to be guided and reminded every day. Like Stephen said, the power of intention. It's so easy to go back into habitual thinking or go back into things that feel comfortable or easy, but don't bring you excitement, right? And so we want to remind ourselves of this vision every day, and that we're working toward that. So every year we've been together, and every year, for the past many has been a really exciting one for me in terms of development and growth and moving closer to my higher true self. And so, I think this year is going to be a big one for us.
Yeah, we're going to take a quantum leap this year. And so I guess we'll leave it there. We have a list of 5 questions that we ask each of our guests. We'll come back to that another time. I think we've been yammering away here long enough, but I do want to wrap up and just say we hope you'll subscribe either via iTunes or at least make our website ownstream.co a regular site for you to visit. We will be coming out with podcast episodes weekly, probably on Thursdays. A few are already in the can, so I can tell you that if this is your first episode, we've already recorded episodes with Stacey Murphy and Tynan, again, my friend from Project Hollywood, former pickup artist, who's now, for me, like a prototype of the Ownstream lifestyle. I'll refer to that, by the way, over at times, the Ownstream lifestyle. I'm not trying to label this movement or anything. That's just kind of how we think of it. But he is the prototype for that. I mean, he's lived in RVs. He has multiple online businesses. He travels on a whim to far corners of the globe out of a 19-liter backpack. He's very minimalist. Very intentional, very conscious, and really interesting. Stacey is also somebody who has an online business, a very non-intuitive online business where she teaches people through the internet to grow their own food. Plus, she has a fabulous story about how her life pivoted at a farmer's market in New York City. And she talks a lot about her spiritual life. It's very revealing and very candid and very beautiful. Both conversations very unique and different, but both of them extremely useful, hopefully to you. So we hope you'll subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and on Instagram at Own_stream. And I think we'll just leave it right there. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we hope to connect with you in person down the road. But do follow us online because we will be coming out with new content on a very regular basis. You want to say goodbye?
This has been great. I'm excited for the year.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Ownstream podcast. To learn more and connect with us, please visit ownstream.co or follow us on Twitter at Ownstream and Instagram at own_stream.